start going over this now. So we could turn back to number 1, Chromebooks away. Go get my answer key. This is just like filled in. All right, so for number 1, it says the function f of x equals x minus 3 squared plus 5. What is the x value where the minimum occurs? You have 2 options for this. One is you can plug it into the calculator and look at the table. That's what I did here. Look for the minimum or the turning point. So you'll see I'm mirrored around this 0.35, okay? That's my minimum. So that x value is 3. The other option is you can take the value that's in the parentheses with the x and change the sign. That will always work. So -3 becomes +3 for your y value of your minimum. Also works for if they're asking about the maximum. The equation a equals 1250 times 1.05 to the 4th is being used to calculate the amount of money in a savings account. What does the 1.05 represent in this equation? You need to decide if it's representing an increase or a decrease. 1.05, if I move the decimal place over twice, that represents 105%. So I always start out with 100% of something. So if I'm going over 100%, that means I'm increasing. So since I'm over 100%, I'm at 105, it's an increase. It's an increase of 5%. Whatever amount I am over 100 is that amount that I'm increasing by, because you always start with 100. So I increased by 5%. Number 3, find the zeros of this function. Whenever you're finding the zeros, you're setting it equal to 0. You're always going to try to factor first. This one you can factor. Thank you. So I'm going to use sum and product. You know several different ways at this point to solve for the zeros. You know quadratic formula, you know completing the square, you know factoring, and you know inverse operations. You can use any of these except inverse operations on this. So if you like quadratic formula, great, use quadratic formula. This is set up nicely for you because your A would be 2, B would be -1, and C would be -3. I'm going to use factoring because it's quicker. Sum is -1, that's the number in front of the x. Product is -6 because it's 2 times -3. Then you need to find a pair of numbers that multiplies to -6 and adds to -1. In my calculator, product divided by x, x plus y1 into y2, and I'm looking for my pair that adds to -1. Here's -1 in my y2 column. My x and y are 2 and -3, so that's my pair. I cannot use the shortcut on this question because it has a 2 in front of the x squared. So I'm rewriting my problem, 2x squared plus 2x minus 3x minus 3 equals 0. From there, I'm finding the GCF of the first 2 terms, which is 2x. I'm left with x plus 1. Then I'm finding the GCF of the second 2 terms and carrying down the minus sign, which is 3. My 2 bubbles have to match, so it has to be x plus 1 as well. From there, my 2 bubbles are 2x minus 3 and x plus 1. I now have to set each of those individual bubbles equal to 0. So 2x minus 3 equals 0. Solve for x. X is 3 over 2, or 1.5. And then x plus 1 equals 0. X is -1. So that's how you're going about number 3. Number 4 is just asking you to factor completely. So completely means you need to use more than one factoring method or factor it twice. I'm going to always try to do GCF first. When I look at this, I see I have a greatest common factor of x. They all have an x. When I take out x, I'm left with x squared minus 24x minus 25. On this bubble here, I can use sum and product. I know I have to factor twice because it said completely. The sum is negative 24, product is negative 25. I need to find a pair that multiplies to negative 25 and adds to negative 24. Which is right here, 1 and negative 25. I can use the shortcut on this because there's a 1 in front of the x squared. So your answer, don't forget to bring that x down, the GCF, is x times x minus 25 times x plus 1. Questions about that? Any questions 1 through 4? Okay. Number 5, what is 3 radical 54 expressed in simplest radical form? We did one like this in class. First, I'm simplifying radical 54 in my calculator. So I plugged in my number underneath the radical, which is 54, divided by x squared. Here's what I got in my table. Looking for the largest pair of whole numbers furthest down the list, which is 3 and 6. So 3 rad 54 simplifies to 3, because this is 3 times rad 54. Rad 54 simplifies to 3 radical 6. Okay? So it's 3 from the original problem times 3 radical 6. Because 3 radical 6 is just radical 54 simplified. Then I multiply those two front numbers because they're attached by multiplication. All 3 of these things are attached by multiplication. 3 times 3 is 9. So it's 9 radical 6. So simplify the radical first, then multiply that other number on the outside. Number 6, write the equation in vertex form. Complete the square. So I told you to complete the square. It's not going to say complete the square on the test. You're going to have to know that. First thing you're doing is figuring out the number that goes inside those boxes. Well, actually, first thing you're doing is rewriting the equation, but I already did that to save time. Take the b value, which is negative 4, divide it by 2, gives you negative 2. Then square it, which is positive 4. So 4 goes inside both of those boxes. From there, you're rewriting the equation with the first 3 terms as one single bubble squared. X minus 4x plus 4. I take this negative 2. That number goes inside the parentheses with the x. And then I combine my outside numbers. Negative 5 minus 4 is negative 9. So that's my equation in vertex form. Number 7, which relation is a function? The definition of a function is every x has its own line. So you're looking to make sure every x only has one line. Can't have more than one. So for choice 1, I have 2, negative 1, 0, 2, and 3. The input of 2 has 2 different outputs, 5 and 3. So that cannot be a function. Option 2, I have 2, 3, 5, 1, and 9. Those are all different inputs. So they all have their own output. So that's the answer. Option 3, negative 2, has 2 different outputs, 4 and 6. So that's not a function. Option 4, negative 2, again, has 2 different outputs, 3 and 2. So it can't be option 4. So that's why it's option 2. Number 8, given the graph of the line expressed by the equation negative 6x plus b, if b is decreased by 2 units, how would the graph of the new line be shifted? You have a couple options for this. You can plug this right in the calculator. First plug in negative 6x. See what it looks like? Then plug in the next one, negative 6x, and they said they were going to decrease b by 2. So if it started out as 0, because I just plugged in negative 6x plus 0, I can plug in negative 6x minus 2 for the second one and look at what happened. From the blue line to the red line, I got moved down. Okay, so the whole line got pushed down. So it went down 2 units. Whatever this number is, however many units they're shifting it or decreasing or increasing by, is the number of units. The direction, if you're increasing b, it's going up. If you're decreasing it, you're going down. Left and right, you would have to be doing something to the x. So there would have to be a number in parentheses with the x in order for you to be moving left or right. Same as the shifts we've been talking about for the last few weeks. Questions on the front? All right, flip to the back. They're asking if it's linear or exponential for this one. From the table, figure out what the rate of change is. If it's the same, it's linear. If it's not the same every time, it's exponential. Here, I'm subtracting 2. Here, I'm subtracting 2. Here, I'm subtracting 2. Here, I'm subtracting 2. It's always -2. That means it's linear. Because it has a constant rate of change. That's all you have to say. If it's not the same every time, it's exponential. And you would say because it doesn't have a constant rate of change. So use that same explanation every time. 10. The amount A in grams of a radioactive material that is decaying can be modeled by this function where D is the number of days since it started its decay. By what percent is the material decaying? What percent is it going down by? First thing you should do is change this number to a percent. You always start out with 100%. I went from 100 to 95, so that means I subtracted 5%. So change it to a percent, then do 100 minus whatever the percent is, and that will give you the amount you're going down by. Explain what is meant by A of 12 equals 189. 12 is in parentheses, so is D. D represents the number of days. So you're going to say after 12 days, 189 represents the amount in grams that's left. So after 12 days, 189 grams were left. You have to be really specific there. Or you can just say 189 is the amount left. I'll let that one slip too. The next one is determine the roots. The roots are the same as the x-intercepts, where I'm crossing the x-axis. So that's these 2 points, -3 and 1. A lot of you guys on the last test put it in parentheses and then you got a point off. Do not, well, not the last test because it was all multiple choice, the one before that. Do not put this in parentheses, then it looks like an ordered pair. Either this or this. Do not use parentheses. Put it in a box or something. Parentheses make it wrong. Solve the quadratic equation by completing the square. All right, round answers to the nearest 10. So, again, take the b value, which is 8. Well, rewrite it first, but obviously I did that. Divide it by 2. That gives you 4. Then square it. That gives you 16. That goes inside your boxes. Then rewrite the first 3 terms. X plus 4 squared, because this number is a 4. Combine -8 minus 16. It's -24. All of this equals 0. I should have put equals 0 here, my bad. Now I'm solving it. First thing you need to do is move this 24 over to the other side. So then I have x plus 4 squared equals 24. Next step is to get rid of the exponent. Take the square root of both sides. That gets rid of this exponent. So I have x plus 4 equals rad 24. Also, x plus 4 equals negative radical 24 because there's a positive answer and a negative answer. From there, you're subtracting 4 on both sides for both equations. So your answer is x equals rad 24 minus 4 and negative rad 24 minus 4. Now, this question is asking for it to the nearest 10. So you have to plug those into your calculator and round it. Rad 24 minus 4 and negative rad 24 minus 4. So your answers are 0.9, because this is rounded to the nearest tenth. That's 1 decimal place. and negative 8.9. So those are your answers. Make sure you read it. If it says round, you're plugging it in the calculator. You do not have to simplify that into simplest radical form because it's asking for the decimal answer. Number 13 is the quadratic formula question. You have the quadratic formula right here. You don't have to memorize it. First thing you have to do is get it equal to 0. You cannot tell me A, B, and C yet. So you're subtracting 4 on both sides. Then you're telling me A, B, and C. A is 3, B is negative 2, C is negative 4. Then you're plugging it into the quadratic formula. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. You must show this to get full credit, everything being substituted in. If you do not, you are not getting full credit. Negative negative 2 is just 2. Then you're going to plug in everything underneath the square root into your calculator. When you do that, you get 52. And this is all over 6. Then you have to simplify radical 52, which simplifies to 2 radical 13, all over 6. Since these three numbers can all be divided by 2, I can simplify this by dividing by 2. So it's 1 plus or minus 1 radical 13 all over 3. They're asking for it in simplest radical form on this question, so you have to simplify the radical. Yes?
Did you get the 2 from, like, if you were the
This? This?
Yeah.
Negative negative 2 is positive 2. Other questions?